I'm just gonna come out and say it. Linnea is actually a DPS loss for one of Navia's best teams. I know. Hear me out, okay? Look, I figured after talking about Ningguang and Noelle, it'd be time to also cover the other Geo character that I wanted to discuss with regards to the Linnea situation, and what I found definitely surprised me a little more than I thought it would, so that's what we're going to be going over today. Let's get one thing clear, Linnea works and does what she's supposed to in Navia teams. She has the Geo Res Shred, and she can enable Lunar Crystalise without needing Columbina. Now, what makes Navia different to the aforementioned Ningguang and Noelle is that she's a hybrid DPS. See, where the other characters being on-fielders can really benefit from having off-field DPS that Linnea actually provides, Navia's cannons can already provide that, so whilst Linnea means more off-field DPS, that effect is kind of lesser, if you will, compared to like Ningguang and Noelle. That's just one of the issues, but before we get into some numbers and really the main problem with Linnea, I just want to ask you all to don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel so that you can help combat the dreaded algorithm. If you're watching on mobile, there may be a hype button available as well. That can also help with the algorithm. There's two teams that I looked into. The first one was a standard Lunar Crystalise team with Farina. Now, the experience of this team with Linnea was kind of similar to what I talked about with Ningguang. See, Linnea's own energy becomes a bit of an issue due to the whole delay in particle generation with Lumi. And on top of that, you wouldn't ever want to use Favge Linnea, because that would just basically constitute a severe DPS loss from herself. So after Columbina and Farina's abilities, shotgun into Linnea ult and then back to Navia on-field time until her ult is ready again pretty much seems to be the way to go. And that might actually sound a little bit familiar because that's exactly how I described my approach to playing a Ningguang Linnea team. Comparing Linnea to C2R1 Xilonen, the total team DPS difference does seem quite minimal, but still in favor of Linnea. Now, looking at the personal DPS of the characters in these teams, unsurprisingly, without any damage percent buffs, Navia's DPS is less than Linnea compared to Xilonen, but only by a smidge. See, I suspect the loss of the damage percent is actually getting somewhat compensated by Ascendant Gleam, I guess. That being said though, Linnea does steal a bunch of Navia's Lunar Crystalise reactions, that's probably for the best though. Without the HP percent buff or the Hydro Res Shred from Linnea, well, rather from C2 Xilonen, Farina's DPS does actually drop by around 30% in this team, assuming of course you've actually built her for DPS. But Columbina's DPS seems to remain more or less the same, since she's mostly doing that direct Lunar Crystallized DPS, which of course gets buffed by the Geo Res Shred. So Linnea's off-field DPS is bridging the gap in DPS from Navia and Farina, so the teams seem to perform very similarly, making Linnea a side grade to C2R1 Xilonen, but likely a noticeable, albeit probably not super duper massive upgrade to C0 Xilonen at the very least. I can't confirm that for a fact because obviously I don't have C0 Xilonen anymore. The real twist is LC squared. Lunar Crystalise and Lunar Charged. This is a team that I've talked about in the past. I suppose it shouldn't be that big of a surprise. After all, Linnea only gives Geo Res Shred compared to someone like Xilonen, who, regardless of constellations, at least gives Geo and Electro Res Shred, so the latter of course being great for that Lunar Charge DPS. Xilonen also gives Hydro Res Shred as well, but in this regard that's mostly irrelevant. This all explains there being a nerf. That part kind of figured out just by looking at Linnea's kit, but we're looking at a nerf, at least on my side, of as much as 40k DPS, going from 176k DPS with C2 Xilonen all the way down to 137k DPS with Linnea. So what's going on? Well, I think there's several factors in play, at least for me. So let's go through them. I have R2 in Efa, and on top of that, I now have a ludicrously good Serenade build for Inefa. Like, it's so good that it's actually a top 0.3% build for Inefa just straight up. And that's hilarious because Inefa's DPS set obviously is Morningstar, and my Serenade build is up there with the large majority of Morningstar builds. On top of that, if I pair that build up with, of course, my aforementioned R2 Inefa, well, she's actually still outperforming Linnea, even if Linnea is on a Morningstar build with both of them on the same team. Without R2, well, my Linnea actually does end up being slightly stronger, like marginally stronger than my Serenade and Nefa. That's how good this Serenade build actually is. And then it seems like Columbina is doing primarily direct Lunar charge DPS. So in the Linnea team, by losing out on the C2 plus HP's percent buff, but also the Electro Red Shred coming from someone like Xilonen instead, well, it does seem like Columbina's DPS drops in half. I can't confirm exactly since, again, I don't have C0 Xilonen, but I'm pretty sure even without the damage percent buff for Navia, the energy and ult cooldown reduction for Nefa, and the HP percentage for Columbina, Xilonen would still likely be the stronger option than Linnea for this team. Even if Linnea is putting in the work with the off-field DPS, it just doesn't seem likely to me that she would be a stronger option over someone like Xilonen. Perhaps an additional context, Golden Troop Zhongli, for what I believe is microwave memes, seems to result in the same team DPS as my Linnea. So take that for what you will. I don't think there's really anything else that need be said. Look, at the end of the day, if you want to enjoy a solid Lunar Crystalise Navia team, especially one with Ascendant Gleam, then I think getting Linnea is still a good idea. If for nothing else, you can always use Linnea and not have to rely on Columbina in order to still have Lunar Crystalise Navia, in which case you could put Columbina somewhere else in like Stygian or Spiral Abyss. But probably the big thing about Linnea is being able to enable Lunar Crystalise in the first place. So for that reason, I'd probably still lean towards getting her. But on the flip side, with this current Stygian onslaught, the Linnea shield boss being the Moon Gecko, the first time I actually cleared it was with LC Squared, but that was of course with Navia and Xilonen. So to that extent, that kind of says to me that if you have C2 Xilonen, kind of not really a strong reason to get Linnea for your Navia teams at the very least, or at least for LC Squared. Like I mentioned, with the actual Lunar Crystallised Navia team, it's pretty much the same, so if you don't have C2 Xilonen, I suppose there is a reason to get Linnea. Maybe? Something like that. Anyway, that's just a random thought. But I do also want to point out that you could always, if you need Ascendant Gleam, run someone like Ilua. That being said though, if you do run Ilua, you're probably not going to be using Xilonen because Xilonen won't be able to heal in that team. So at that point, there may be another slightly strongish reason to bring Linnea. At least Linnea can actually heal. Or you just bring Zhongli or, I don't know, someone else. Literally, if you're going to run Ilua and Columbina together. I will say though, running Ilua and Columbina did seem to be a bit of a DPS loss compared to running Farina and Columbina. That's of course because I have actually built Farina for DPS, whereas my Ilua is currently just a C2 Serenade bot. So that's a difference, but I don't think Ilua is even capable of actually providing enough DPS, even in a DPS build, so I don't really see that changing all that much. Let me just put all of this in the comments below. All of this. Let me just put all of it, because look, how do you feel about Linnea and Navia in those teams? Let me know in the comments, because I know some people in previous comments for previous videos have mentioned that perhaps the energy thing that I mentioned about Linnea is something I might be harping on a little bit too much on, but this is really something that I have been experiencing a lot firsthand, and I really feel like this is something that folks really should keep an eye on at the very least. It's not the end of the world, obviously there are ways to play around it, but kind of feels like some people might be trying to dismiss it just a little bit too much. I don't know. That's just how I feel. Anyway, hope you guys enjoyed. If you like this video, hit that like button, subscribe for more Genshin Impact action, and until next time, I'll see you guys later. Thanks for watching. Bye!
With the fog of darkness, destruction shall rise. My blade is all that remains. begins now.